Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Matthew Carpenter Arevalo. I am the Vice President of Operations for Uhuru Network, and it is my great pleasure today to be introducing our two co-hosts, Dr. Manny Villafaña and Dr. David Joyce. By means of an introduction for a man who needs no introduction, Dr. Villafaña has been named one of the living legends of medicine. He is a master entrepreneur that has 7 IPOs under his belt and 50 years of medtech innovations. He has founded companies that have reshaped the medtech landscape and helped advance cardiac medicine tenfold. You may know him as the founder of St. Jude Medical, where he developed the St. Jude heart valve, the most commonly used prosthesis in the world, with approximately 5 million patients currently implanted. He's also the reason why we have pacemakers that last over 30 to 40 years, and his list of accomplishments and accolades is incredibly long and incredibly inspirational. Dr. David Joyce is the Director of Cardiac Transplantation and Associate Professor at the Medical College of Wisconsin. Dr. David Joyce is an accomplished cardiothoracic surgeon and a member of Medical 21's advisory board. He received his medical degree from Harvard Medical School, completed his residency at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and his fellowship at Stanford University, and he also holds a Master of Business Administration from the University of Chicago. I am thrilled to present these two accomplished individuals today as we discuss Medical 21, their recently launched Regulation 8 capital raise, and the living legend of medicine himself, Dr. Villafaña. And with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Joyce. Dr. Joyce, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be with you. I'm glad everyone could join us today. We've got a lot of exciting topics to cover, and it's always a pleasure to join the screen with Manny Villafaña. Good to see you, Manny.
Good morning. Good morning, David.
Well, I want to start our conversation today by talking about a number, the number 7. Now, 7 is considered by some people to be the perfect number. It's a lucky number in Western cultures. For people from a Judeo-Christian background, it has sacred significance as the number of days in which God created the universe. And in the world of athletics, it's an important number in that there's very few people who have accomplished 7 championships. When we think about the people on that list, we think of people like Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, and Tom Brady. But when we talk about entrepreneurs and we talk about taking companies public, this is a very different challenge. And this is something that I don't know if there's anyone else who has gotten to the heights that you have in your career in any industry, let alone in the medical device industry, which has extraordinary regulatory challenges. I don't think I ever saw anyone live or die based on whether a pass was completed in the NFL, but these are the sorts of things that we deal with in healthcare IPOs. So I was hoping you could start off by telling us a little bit about your background, what it was like, launching your first IPO, and did it get easier as you went along, or for many of us, this is just such an extraordinary accomplishment that it's hard to even fathom.
David, let me see. I was trying to figure out, do I need 3 days or 5 days to tell you all of those things? But we're going to try to do this in about an hour. And first of all, I'm honored to be on this, particularly with you, because I've admired your career as well. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, that we're talking to a physician here who does heart transplants as a hobby. Now, that's his business, and of course, it's an enormous task, but he does it, and he does it well, and he is extremely well recognized. And I'm honored to have the ability to not only be on this broadcast with him, but also work with him closely. But answering the question, how do we do it, and why do we do it, and how was it when we first did the first one? I always remember clearly walking in to an office of a gentleman with white hair, an elderly gentleman, and I walked in, and he says, good afternoon. I said, good afternoon, sir. And he said, what is your name? And I said, my name is Manny Villafaña. And he says, and you're from Minnesota? And I said, yes. He said, well, why isn't your name Johnson or Peterson or Olson or something like that? And I said, no, it's Manny Villafaña. In fact, if you pronounce it in Spanish, it's Manny Villafaña. And I said, I'm Puerto Rican, born in the Bronx, but I'm living in Minnesota. So then he said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to create a pacemaker. And he said, isn't that the product that our poster child, Medtronic here in Minnesota, isn't that the poster child? of Medtronic? I said, well, yes, they make pacemakers. So what in the world could you be doing that they haven't developed? I said, well, I'm trying to make a long life pacemaker. Their pacemakers typically would last, 12, 18 months. And I'm going to make a 10-year pacemaker. Wow, he said. What do they think about it? They said it can't be done. Oh, really? So what are you doing? I said, and I began to talk about, some of the ideas that we have. And he finally said to me, he said, wait a minute, do they agree with what you're doing? Oh, no, they're suing me. So then he said, so let me understand. This is your first company, isn't it? I said, yeah. And you're already being sued by Medtronic. Yeah. And you're trying to do something that they say is impossible. Yeah. And you're Puerto Rican. Yeah. Well, nobody gave me any money. He said, sorry, and he passed. But that's where you start. You start with a story like that because that's what we did. And we finally did end up making a pacemaker that not only lasted 10 years, but we have models that are still running 49 years later. Okay. So what do you need to do all these things? Well, let me just talk about get off of the pacemakers. We did that. In fact, if I may, this was the pacemaker that Medtronic was making at that time. All right. And it lasted 12, 18 months. Okay. This is what we do now when we make a pacemaker. This is one of my company's CPI. Okay. And you can clearly see that what we accomplished. Okay. From a little pacemaker like this to a big pacemaker, etc. Okay, we did that. Now, when you start doing these companies, you got to identify there's a need. I mean, every 12 months, 18 months, we were taking out pacemakers. I tell people that there was actually somebody trying to make a zipper, honest to God, a biological zipper that you can open up. So when you change the pacemaker, you open up the zipper and take out the old one, put a new one. People don't even believe me when I tell them that. No, it was an actual company being formed.
Unbelievable.
The second thing is, remember that we as an entrepreneur do not do these things by ourselves. We got to build teams, great teams, big teams, teams of people who are good and are also dedicated to what you're trying to do, and that is to help people. I mean, we're here today. What we're going to be talking about today is, again, to continue our effort to help people. You also got to please understand that you got to take great risk. If you're risk averse, go home. Really, really, really go home. I tell people, if you don't take risks, nothing will happen. You will do nothing. In fact, I once talked about this part at MBA students in Harvard, and I thought one guy was going to come and jump me and say, "Get the hell out of here," because how can you say that? But the truth is that if you don't take risks, nothing will happen. You take a guy like David Joyce here. Every day he goes into the OR and he has a patient, could be a young patient or an older patient, and we're going to take this guy's heart out. Tell me that's not a risk. But if he doesn't take the risk, nothing happens other than maybe a patient dies. So we're going to be talking about risk and what we do.
Manny, do you think that the risk gets easier the more success you have? Because I think, you're right. In medicine, we face a different, it's a similar risk. You still have that safety risk with any new medical device you're going to bring into the market.
Yeah.
So I feel like when we offer an operation, we tend to, we're thinking about that risk of safety and is this going to work? And is the risk that we have to put the patient through a big operation, is it going to pay off? And when you're an entrepreneur, you also, of course, have the business side, and there's all kinds of risks involved with that. I know for me, the more experience I get, the better I am at understanding that risk and knowing when we put in the computer model and the computer model says this patient's got a 15% chance of not making it through the surgery, I know because I've done enough of these before, maybe actually we've got a few cards we can play that we can we can kind of beat the odds a little bit. Is that what it is? Has that been your experience too, as you've now done multiple successful startups?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know if we're taking more risk or less risk, but believe me, we continue to take risks. When we did the second company, which was St. Jude Medical, where we developed the heart valve, let me just say this, that heart valves was an old ball and cage like this. And we finally ended up with a valve, if I can, let me see. Okay, we ended up with a valve that looks like this. Okay, that's a St. Jude valve. Now, it doesn't mean anything to an individual, but believe me, the old valves they would fail, they would break, they would clog up, they would cause strokes, that is embolic strokes to your brain at a rate of 6% per year. And I said, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And two doctors approached me and said, Manny, you got to do valves because valves are so bad. I really didn't say, well, that's too risky. Although doctors were telling me, Manny, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy to go after the valves because all you're going to end up is have a patient with valvular disease. And when you're finished, you now have a patient with artificial valvular disease. And I said, well, we got to do it. We got to try. And so we ended up with the St. Jude valve, which became the most commonly used prosthesis in the world. Okay. And it was, and for the patient, we went from about a 6% thromboembolic rate to less than 1%, okay, almost a 0%. Much better flow, and they would last. I always kid around that when you get a St. Jude valve, they give you a little card, and it's a replacement card, a free replacement at 200 years. It was designed to last at least 200 years. But as far as evaluating the risk, we know there were risks, but we also know that if you don't take the risk, nothing will happen. That is to say, there will never be a St. Jude valve. So we continued. Now, I was going to mention that running a tight ship, okay? And let me explain that. When we did St. Jude, we ended up doing an IPO. A lot of people, initial public offering. And I always ask everybody, what do you think? We sold this company for $30 billion. So what do you think was the IPO? And a lot of people said, well, it was $5 million, Manny. How about $50 million? And I even had one person say, you did it for $500 million. But I showed them the actual picture of the front page of the initial prospectus. It was for 962,000. That's right, less than $1 million. So part of this is that we try to do these projects, with a tight ship. No other way of saying it, because you can spend money like crazy on these things, particularly now the environment where you have such a heavy regulatory path that you have to take, where you can be spending a lot of money. So for the entrepreneur who wants to do these things, I say, be careful. Money, you have to get money, and you have to have enough money to do these projects. I mean, later on, we're going to be talking about how we're financing this, and the excitement about this whole thing is not only the product, but the way we're going to finance this. Yes, we've done 7 IPOs, as David mentioned. Yes, we had fun doing those things. Yes, most of them were very successful. How successful, Manny? Well, if you gave me $10,000 when I started CPI, I'd be worth about 90 million today. If you gave me the minimum at when we did St. Jude was $16,500, that'd be worth about 95 million today. Okay, so we were very successful with these things, but we always needed money. Okay, so run the ship tight. Like I said, I started St. Jude with $1 million, $962,000. Okay, and we were able to do that. So these are the things that we do.
Another way that I think we always think about success, obviously, is in the lives that have been impacted. And when I know you and I recently had the opportunity to spend some time in Minneapolis together, and it was really impressive. You know, we think about certain cities and the impact that an individual has had. You know, think about places like Orlando with Walt Disney and Detroit with Henry Ford. When we driving around and just seeing the massive campuses of the medical device companies that have made Minneapolis such an incredible ecosystem for medical device startups. I mean, you literally have been there from the very beginning and have been a huge force in establishing that. And I'm sure you must run into patients with 3 million patients running around with a St. Jude valve. You must run into people constantly who have one of these devices in their chest and have had their life saved by it. And I mean, I have a little taste of that as a surgeon. Every once in a while, I'll be at the state fair and I'll run into somebody that I operated on. But I'm talking about a small fraction of the lives that you've impacted with your devices. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, I love that story because my mother received my pacemaker. And when I received the call from the doctor saying your mother needs a pacemaker, I said, well, that's fine. However, I want her to receive what pacemaker is she going to receive? And I said, he said to me, she's going to receive a Medtronic pacemaker. And I said, well, I would really like her to get a CPI pacemaker. In fact, I didn't even say CPI. I said I wanted to receive a new lithium pacemaker because we're the only ones making a lithium pacemaker. And he said, no, I don't want that to happen. So he says, who the hell are you? And I told him who I was and everything. And he said, okay. But he's, you know, I said, look, he said, she's not going to get one of your pacemakers. So I said, well, then I'm going to send it to another hospital. Then he really got angry at me. And I finally said to him, please, let's make a deal. Allow me to have my people come in and tell you about our technology, and then you make a decision. He said, okay, but I'm going to use a Medtronic pacemaker. I said, no, you promised to keep your mind open. About 10 days later, he calls me up and he says, your mother got a pacemaker. And the next 6 patients also got a CPI pacemaker. Okay. And sure enough, about 3 months, 4 months later, Medtronic announced that the pacemaker that they were going to put into my mother had a recall of 75,000 pacemakers were recalled. So my mother had our pacemaker. That pacemaker ran for 36 years. Okay, now, by coincidence, my natural father died when I was 10 years old. But my surrogate father, a guy at the boys club where I grew up, called me and said, Manny, I need a pacemaker. I said, fine, get a CPI pacemaker. And he did. And he had that pacemaker for 12 years. And remember, at a time when pacemakers were only lasting, 12 months, 18 months, at the max, 24 months. I've had people, friends, other members of the family. I recently had a distant, like a cousin, get a St. Jude valve, and I go in, talk to the surgeons. And so, yes, I've had a great experience of having my family participate, and it's fun. It really, really is fun.
Yep. So let's transition here for a minute, and let's just think about. I want to talk about Medical 21, and when I think about Medical 21 in the context of what we've been discussing, I think about a aortic valve market that just seems astronomical, 80,000 a year. I mean, that just seems incredible. Then I think about a pacemaker market of 200,000 implants a year in this country. When we talk about coronary artery bypass grafting, we're talking about 500,000 patients, and that's patients. They're getting 3 to 5 grafts each. So talk to us about the opportunity. First of all, maybe give us a little background on what is Medical 21? Why are you excited about it? And I'd really like to hear kind of your thoughts on how this opportunity compares to some of these other big opportunities that you've been involved in.
I always have a great, I always tell a little story about when we did the St. Jude valve. The world market at that time was 65,000 valves worldwide. The market that we're now looking at, you say about the US because you live in the US. I always talk about the world market because I have to handle the whole freaking world. And right now, although we have about 500,000 patients in the United States having bypass surgery, the world is about between 800,000 and 1 million cases, procedures per year. But like you said, the average patient receives somewhere between 3 and 4, sometimes 5 grafts. So we estimate that the world market for what we're doing, which is an artificial graft, is 2.5 to 3.5 million per year. Now you think about that, that's about 50 times bigger than when we started St. Jude. And by the way, let me remind everybody that we sold St. Jude for $30 billion, okay? It's a market that's growing because our patients are getting older. You as a surgeon know very, very well that the surgery has become more and more complex. A normal patient, when he or she has chest pains, will have a picture taken and the doctor will say, hey, Joe, Mary, you got blockages on your heart. We're going to try to open them up with a stent. We do that. But normally in about anywhere from about 2 days to about 2 years, they have to come back because they still have more blockages forming, and some of the stents that they put in have also already reached the nose, that is to say, closed up again. So as a result of this, we open up that patient, and we have to open up their legs, not just one leg, but 2 legs. In 23% of the patients, we have to open up the arms because we need more vessels. And then in 95% of the patients, we tend to use the internal mammary artery. That is a vessel that goes to a man's breast or a woman's breast. Take that vessel off that part of the body and then put it on the heart. I mean, it's a very, very difficult, unsightly surgery, a lot of pain, a lot of chance of infection, a lot of time, a lot of surgeon's time, okay? Costly. Then what's even worse, when you're all finished, you have to go to intensive care for quite a few days just to learn how to even walk. Then after surgery, you have to take that patient in for about anywhere from 3 weeks to a year. He or she will be getting physical therapy just to learn how to walk again. So we come along and we developed an artificial graft. It's been tried for 45, 50 years. No one has been able to do it. We finally figured out a way how to do it. We are now completing our animal work. And in fact, you yourself, David, you know, you've been planting this in animals. And in fact, we implanted one in an animal, and Dr. Joyce himself and his dad came to me and said, Manny, we had to put this in an awkward situation, and it may last 24 to 48 hours because we normally wouldn't do this in a human. Well, that animal is still around over 240 days and still running. Okay.
I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed that an animal that I thought that vessel we sewed to was so tiny. I don't think there's a vein graft in the world that would have stayed open for 24 hours. So the fact that sheep is now eligible for Social Security, I have to tell you, is a little embarrassing. I didn't think that my prediction was a little off.
Yeah, your prediction. In fact, when I called David, I said, look, David, I don't want to call you a liar, but here we are. We have an animal now 40 days, and it's continued, and now we have it up to about 240 days. And so, these are some of the results that we have had with this device. And I remember the first time that we showed our device to other surgeons, there was one very prominent surgeon that said, Manny, the best graft I've ever seen only lasted 3 days. And you're showing me grafts that are 14 days, 20 days. I said, yes. He said, I got to see it. Came and visited us. And that group is now one of our teams that's going to be evaluating this. But this is what we're doing. We're trying to develop a graph. We have developed a graph. We're now preparing material for the FDA and other authorities overseas so that we can begin doing human work. And to do that, we need additional funding that we're doing. And what's exciting about the project, not only is the project exciting, but the method that we're going to be using, the Reg A method, the Reg A Plus method, is relatively new. I mean, if anybody's interested, just go to our website, medical21.com, and then it should say there that there is a form and also a document that will be necessary for you to read, and make sure that you get a chance to read that. It's an offering circular that you have to read, okay? But we're doing it, that's something that really very infrequently has been done in the medical field. And so I'm excited that we're going to be exploring that and doing that pioneer work, again, creating another avenue for how to finance small companies that need capital, particularly when you can't get an IPO done. All right. I mean, if we were going to do an IPO now, I think we would really be in trouble with the market the way it is these days. So this method that we're doing opens up our company to a lot of people, both the accredited and non-accredited investor, to what I call, Joe the bartender, Byron the hairdresser, anybody that really would like to have the opportunity to invest. Study our site, study the offering circular, make your decisions, and we're making it as easy as possible to invest. In fact, you can invest just using your credit card. I mean, we're making this as easy as possible. And what happens is that it will affect millions of patients. And I know everyone out there has a mother, a grandfather, an uncle, a brother, or something like that, has had bypass surgery and knows what I'm talking about. And let's not forget that you're helping people when you do this. We have a lot of things ahead of us, and we're having a lot of fun doing this project. This will be the biggest project we have ever done. And if it's successful, we'll really have the opportunity of investing and making money so that everybody has that benefit. If you can visit medical21.com, or if you want to, we have another little site called investinmanny.com. And again, study that and look at it. And then if you're interested, there is an offering circular right on page, and then you can do it. There'll be, we have legal disclaimers in that area as well that we have to ask you to please read in conjunction with the offering circular.
So as a surgeon, one of the things there are a number of features of this product that get me pretty excited. When I evaluate a patient for CABG, there's really kind of three things that we're looking at. We're looking at the function of the heart, we're looking at the target quality, but one of the most important is we're looking at the conduit and the quality of the conduit. And I don't know if it's just me as I'm getting, further into this, but it does seem to me like we are having more and more trouble with patients who just don't have any usable vein in their leg. CABG has been studied probably more than any other treatment in scientific trials that we have in medicine. And in spite of that, we have enormous controversies, and most of them center on this issue of conduit. About the only thing that we really all agree on is that a left internal mammary artery to the LAD is a worthwhile bypass, although even that now is, in octogenarians, which are a bigger and growing group of our practice. I mean, I think the benefits in that group are not necessarily a slam dunk, but we're seeing, more and more challenges in terms of getting good conduit. There's no consensus on what the ideal conduit should be in any given situation. And I think one of the problems we have is that you know, harvesting a conduit is a technical exercise, and there's just not going to be that many people that, I mean, it's hard to find experienced technicians who can even acquire these conduits. I think this is a problem that every cabbage program periodically runs into, is just, you know, making sure that they've got somebody with that depth of experience. So one of the things that excites me is just the ability to have consistency, and to just know that when I open that box, we're going to have something that's going to really work. And I know there's probably a lot of proprietary information related to the graft itself, but I wonder if, I mean, the prospect that you could have something that you can pull out of a box that will outlive what we're using now is mind-blowing to me. And I wonder if you would, you know, how much can you tell us about this graft and how it's constructed, and some of the features that might make it potentially outperform even the best options we currently have?
Well, let's clarify a few things for some of our guests that are watching, because believe it or not, David, there are people out there that are not as smart as you, okay, and they don't know all those terms. But when he says a conduit, it's just a vessel that we have to pull out of your body, okay? And then we need technicians sometimes, in addition to the surgeon, to help pull a vein, an artery out of your body to put it on the body. And they need certain skills. And believe me, I watched it. I've been in surgery a lot of times, and I don't even know how the hell they do it. It's so difficult, okay? And it takes time, and it's costly, and everything like that. Like, for example, in one of the major institutions which has about 19 operating rooms, they only allow one case to be done per operating room per day, because it takes so long. And typically, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but it takes typically anywhere from 2 hours or more to gather the vessels just before you put them on the heart, okay? And I'm coming along and giving you a vessel like an artery, which is better than a vein, and all these other things, and it takes you all of 10 seconds to get. You open up the package, boom, you're ready to go. Let's go, put it in. And that will allow those 19 operating rooms to do maybe 2 or 3 operations per day. So that's an enormous cost saving as well. The handling of veins out of your leg, believe me, unless you're a surgeon, you probably won't appreciate this, but they have to not only take it out of the body, then they have to work with that vein and cut it and knot it and cauterize it and pressurize it and handle it. So much handling that in many cases we are really injuring the graft so much that we see clinically in any journal that you want to pick up that we have in the neighborhood of 25 to 30% failure in the first year. Failures. Why? Not because of the surgeon. He did his job. He or she did a very fine job, but because there is so much handling to get that. Plus the nature of the thing. I mean, is the patient had diabetes? Does he have varicose veins? Is he old, young, you know, whatever? I mean, times that you can't do it. And I'm trying to talk to the Department of Defense to see if I can get some help from them, because they have a lot of patients at the VA hospitals that are amputees. Excuse me, no legs, where do I get the veins from? You get them from Manny. Call Manny, he'll give you some veins, okay? Simple as that. And I don't mean to make that light, but that is a fact of life. There is
absolutely
no place to get veins, all right?
Yeah.
And people have tried to do this for the last 50 years, okay? And, you know, we have just taken a totally different route on how to make this. We approached it the same as I've approached other products, and that is, Manny, it can't be done. Oh, okay, but let's go and try it, okay? And we go a different direction. I was going to name the company Medical 180, okay, instead of Medical 21, but nobody knew what the 180 meant. And the 180 is a simple going the opposite direction. Everybody was going in one direction, trying and trying and trying.
Yeah.
And I said, no, we're going to go the opposite direction. And it worked. Okay.
Yeah.
And like I said, we are already preparing material for the FDA and for the regulatory agencies overseas so that we can start. Okay, the monies that we are raising right now through this Reg A, okay, we're shooting for $40 million, and hopefully we might be able to get that. Again, read the circulars and all that sort of stuff. And if we can do that, that will give us all the monies that we need to do this clinical trials and get going and stuff like that. We hope and anticipate that we'll be able to start our clinicals before the end of the year. And in my opinion, and I'm the guy who's been around the block more than once, this is the biggest single product or an implantable device ever made. Okay. Please, again, you know, we in our legal disclaimers, we have to say to you that these are projections and this is our best efforts and things like that. You know, and there's risk in any investment. So please read those disclaimers as we go along. But I want to tell you and be frank with you how we feel about this product. Okay. And I am so grateful to a guy like David Joyce and the other advisors that I have on the board. I mean, top dogs, top people giving me advice from a clinic, from a surgical side, from a cardiology side, from a materials side, from a finance side. I mean, we have done these companies before, and to me, this is just another company that's even more needed than ever before.
Well, that's great, Manny. What would you, I mean, if people are we talked about that risk word. If people are worried about risk in this situation, how should we think about the investment risk specifically here? You know, what do you see as the potential dangers ahead, or how do you balance that risk reward opportunity?
Well, you know, let me just say this. For the first time in all my years, we've always financed the company. We do some private placements, some private individuals have participated. And then at the appropriate time, we took the companies public. We did an IPO. As we said, we've done 7 IPOs. Okay. Now with the new rules, back, I believe around 2016, 2017, the Jobs Act was introduced. And in there, people were complaining that a lot of these high-tech companies, the Googles of the world, the Teslas of the world, the average individual could not participate because the stock was always selected by the finance house and then given to their primary customers, their best customers, got a shot at it first. So the average individual could not participate. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing that happened is that you have to have, now these days, you have to have revenues before you can go public. And not all the time, but 99% of the time. Okay, we have selected to do a project that took a lot of technology, all right, and a lot of time. It's taken us 5.5, almost 6 years to do where we are right now. I raised money, but now I need more money, but I still don't have any sales. So this Reg A offer, the Jobs Act, has given me the opportunity to reach other people who want to be reached, who want to take a shot at the beginning of something big. And I'm telling you, I don't know of a single product that you go in the body that is as big as this. Okay, I don't know of any. If you know one, call me up and tell me about it. All right. And so here we accomplish. I'm able to raise money, and the individual is able to participate in this. You know, behind me, by the way, all right, right over here, right there is the patent for the first lithium-powered pacemaker. And when they wrote that patent, when we wrote that patent, the inspector, or not the inspector, the individual that gives you the patent, okay, said, I have never seen a patent so encompassing, because if you follow this patent, no one can make a pacemaker like you're making it. And yet today, every single pacemaker of the world, I don't care if it's Medtronic or St. Jude or any other pacemaker manufacturers of the world, all make their patents the same way as that patent is described. Because I've taken the philosophy that I don't get a patent to stop anybody. If you can make something better than me, go and make it. The patient is the one that's going to benefit. If it's better than mine, the patient's going to benefit from that. Okay? All right? Go and make it. However, I'm going to meet you in the marketplace. So not only has the product have to be better, but then it has to be better than our ability to reach doctors. I use a certain way of reaching doctors, an independent force. These people have worked with me for years. They're still working for me, okay? And that's how we reach the doctors. But if you have a better graft than I do, go. Now, as far as we know, right now, at any one time, there's 10 people, 10 institutions, 10 hospitals, 10 companies trying to make an artificial graft. It's been that way for 50 years, okay? We don't know of anybody that has had any success in putting in a small diameter graft, which is what you got to be. You got to be a small diameter graft on the heart that has been successful. We know of one company that's trying to do something, fine. You know, it's a competitor, maybe a competitor. We have another one that's trying to do a totally different way that I have no idea how they're going to succeed, okay? But in the meantime, I don't dilly-dally on thinking about that. I just go and do our job. If somebody comes along and says, look, I got something better than me, go ahead, put it in a patient and show me, you know, and that's how we treat these things. We treat these things as our goal is to help people, okay? And it turns out that if we help them, a lot of work is done. A lot of people go to work. We put a lot of employees. We build buildings around here. I mean, you come to Minnesota, and if you want to see the medical industry here, call Manny, and I'll give you a tour. In fact, when people come to visit us, I say, let's take a little tour. And I take them to all the different companies that we started. We started a small little company of 5,000 square feet like we are right now. And we go from here to there, and I show them where we put almost 1 million square feet uptown a little bit from here where I am right now. Okay, and we do that. Okay.
And if you're going to Minneapolis, you gotta stop and have dinner at Manny's Steakhouse when the day's over. I just want to put that plug in as well. Don't want to miss out on that. Well, I see we're kind of coming up to towards the end of the hour here, so I want to make sure we leave a little time because I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. So let me open the floor up now, and our viewers can chime in if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, so Dr. Joyce and Manny, thank you so much for that presentation. It was very enlightening. And we have some questions that have come in. The first is for Manny, obviously. It says, how does Medical 21 compare to your previous companies? How is the overall experience compared to your past experiences starting companies from scratch and seeing them?
Hey, Matt, I'm having a little difficulty hearing you. Can you get into a mic better, or I can't hear your question.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So the question is, how does Medical 21 compare to your previous companies and your previous experiences taking companies from scratch to IPO?
Well, like I said, we went after a technology that takes a lot of effort, a lot of R&D work. And in fact, at one point, we started all over again, and we had to spend two extra years to change our way of manufacturing, only because we have to manufacture so many of these things. The market is so big. So the biggest change here is that this market is so big that our company has to be bigger. Already, even though we haven't done a single human implant, we are already building our second facility. Okay, because I told the guys, everybody said, Manny, we haven't even proven it in a human. I said, look, if this doesn't work in a human, we all go home. And we will also all go home if it does work in a human and we cannot supply the doctors. So let's get rid of at least one risk. Let's make it. So we're making a facility, instead of having one machine make these things, we're putting a total of 5 machines. We are going to jump ahead on this. So we're running faster than ever before, but it's taken a longer period of time because of the R&D effort. So the one thing that we're doing differently is that the IPO is not available to us. So we're going to be using the Reg A method, and everything seems to be going along okay. And I suggest if anybody that's listening to us, if they're interested, go to our website, medical21.com or investinmanny.com and read the circular though. My lawyer said, you got to tell them read the circular. You got to read the circular. Okay.
Excellent. And are you going to be partnering with any hospitals for this work?
Well, when you do a study, we typically will go overseas first. However, when we went overseas, they said, yeah, we're ready, but please also try to get the FDA. And the FDA, on the other hand, says, we want you to go to the US because too many companies are just going overseas. So we are going to both. We have 3 sites in the US right now that have indicated their willingness and they want to participate in the trial, and including the Wisconsin Medical Center that David is involved with, including the Mayo Clinic, including Texas Heart, okay? And then overseas, we have 4 centers in Switzerland, the highest type of medicine in Europe. I know there are some doctors in Germany or in other places that will disagree with me, but let's put it this way. Switzerland has good medicine. That's why we're going there.
I'm going to ask you one more question, Manny, and then I'm going to give you a breather, ask Dr. Joyce a question, and then come back to you. The question comes from Ted Bird, and he asks, what is the primary difference between Medical 21's artificial vessel and the other companies that have been trying to produce something similar for the past 50 years?
It's interesting. Many, many companies have tried it. The big companies, the Medtronics, the St. Jude's and everything, okay? And they always try to make a vessel very strong because it's got to handle the high pressure, 120, 130, 140 millimeters of pressure, and boom, boom, 100 million times a year pounding. So they try to make it very strong. We have come along and said, we're going the opposite direction. Remember the 180 degrees I told you about? We make our graft extremely weak, very weak. And everybody said, Manny, why are we doing that? How are we doing that? I said, well, we're making the walls super thin, porous, that is permeable, so nutrients from the outside can go in. And inside that vessel, the endothelial cells, the lining is going to be made up of the patient's own cells, own endothelial cells. And the only way those cells will live is if it can get nutrients from the outside. Well, Manny, that's a great idea, but if you put it on the heart with the high pressure and all that sort of stuff, it's going to blow up in your face. But what we've done a second scaffolding that we do. We make a scaffolding out of material of which the cells will cling onto and grow on. And then we put around that vessel a nitinol wire. It's a very, very thin wire of nickel and titanium, very thin, about half the thickness of your hair, half the thickness of my hair, okay? And we give it the strength. So people have tried to make it permeable and all that, but then there's nothing left, nothing for the cells to remain on, because our material will disappear except for the wire. So when the material disappears, the endothelial cells are there and they're hanging now on this nitinol wire that does not go away. And so that's why we have grafts that are already out more than 200 days in animals. And all we really need is 90 days, but we're already out to 200 days or more. And so that's why we're ready to go.
Excellent. Manny, we're going to give you a breather. I want to ask Dr. Joyce. Dr. Joyce, Manny made reference to the fact that he's known you for a long time. He knew your father. I'm curious about your decision to get involved in this project, your relationship with Manny, and as a cardiologist, what makes you really excited about Medical 21?
Yeah, so, my background, I actually grew up in the Twin Cities, believe it or not, in Plymouth, Minnesota, the headquarters of Medical 21. The Medical 21 is low. You could walk to Medical 21 from the house that I grew up in. And so, growing up in that ecosystem with a father who was a cardiac surgeon, I was sort of secondhand exposed to all the exciting things that were happening in cardiac surgery from a very early age. Even as a high school student, I would come into the operating room and peek over the curtain and watch my dad operate. So, for me, this has been a passion for a very long time. I'm a little bit unique in that a lot of surgeons will tend to focus on one specific operation and then they'll kind of disregard everything else within the specialty. My practice is pretty diverse. I tend to cover just about everything in the realm of adult cardiac surgery. But when we talk about just the prevalence of a disease, coronary bypass, coronary artery disease is the biggest killer. And, I give a lecture every month to our third-year medical students. And, of course, we get people that are interested in everything from psychiatry to radiology. And they're at that stage of their career where, very few of them are going to go and be heart surgeons. But I feel like my lecture, and I always tell them this, is the one lecture that they can count on, they need to pay attention to, because either they or someone they love, maybe a family member, will need treatment for coronary disease, likely a bypass operation. And so to me, what's exciting about Medical 21 is that it's again, when we think about 3 million lives that have been affected just by the St. Jude valve, this is on another scale. And it's a challenge that we've been dealing with for over 50 years. So I think to be able to move, there have been so many innovations that I've seen in my career. We think about, again, even in the valve market, we've now got transcatheter valves. We've got all kinds of new mechanical pumps that we can implant for heart failure. There's just been this tremendous renaissance in medical device development, but we're still doing the same operation to do coronary bypass that we were doing back in the 1950s. So, not a lot has changed in terms of innovation in this all important biggest part of our practice. So that's the part of it that I get really excited about.
Right. So, Manny, there's a number of things that are very unique. Your story is very unique. The technology is very unique. And also the means by which you are bringing this product to market is also very unique. Some of the audience members have asked questions about the Reg A model. And so I'm curious as to why you've chosen to go this route, how it's gone so far, and what opportunity is there for the people who choose to participate in this process as investors?
Well, again, as I mentioned, typically you when you form a company, you start it off privately, and then eventually you do an IPO. In our situation, two things were happening at the same time. Number one, the rules were being changed that you need now revenues to be able to do an IPO. And the second thing that came about was the Jobs Act, which said that anyone could invest in this company, virtually anyone. People who have the ability to invest, but maybe don't have $100,000 to invest. Okay, they can come in. So the people of LSI, people that we have known for the last 3 years, said, Manny, why don't we do this together? Because we're trying to do Reg A financings, and you're in need of money, and you're a well-known individual in the medical field, and we're trying to get into the medical field. So our reputation is helping them, their reputation is helping us, and we're going after this. And for the individual, he or she can now participate in a startup company, in a real startup company, which potentially, if everything goes well, and of course, we have all those disclaimers that we again have to remind everybody. If it works, it's an opportunity to get in on the ground floor with whatever money that you feel that you can invest. Okay, and again, the legal disclaimers that we have to read that will be given to you. So you go to one of those two websites, medical21.com or investinmanny.com. They're the same site, and there's a little red button up there. You push it and you say, I want to invest. And there'll be a young lady that comes on, guides you on what you have to do. If you want to pay by credit card, you may, or you could wire your money or whatever it is. There are different methods, and you can do it. It's the simplest thing I've ever seen. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Manny. It's really an incredible time that we're living in, because for so long, wealth creation through innovation was really limited to large institutional investors. So the opportunity now that, as you said, I believe your term was Joe, the bartender, average people can now have the opportunity to participate in the risk and the reward, but also to support some really revolutionary medical technology that can have a major impact on the lives of not only the world, but also friends and family. Many of us who have had people close to us who have been afflicted with different types of heart conditions. So I want to take the opportunity now to thank Dr. Villafaña and Dr. Joyce for the opportunity to have this presentation, to ask questions. Unfortunately, we had way more questions in the than we were able to respond to, but I would encourage everyone, as Manny said, to visit investinmanny.com. That's investinmanny.com. Where you can contact the team, you can learn more about the Reg A capital raise, and any parting words for us, Manny or Dr. Joyce?
David, go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to be with us today, Manny. It's always a pleasure to live vicariously through the incredible career that you've had. So I appreciate everybody being with us.
Okay. Well, thank you. Again, I thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to share our work and share, hopefully, an opportunity. And if you're ever in the Twin Cities, come on over and we'll be happy to show you what we're doing. Okay. And through the site, you can visit and ask questions. And let's hope we can all work together on this one. Thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our webinar. Just as a reminder, that website is investinmanny.com. Feel free to check it out, and we look forward to seeing you there. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.